cricket, chili, concarnage. That's what I'm seeing. Chili concarnage. Nothing going to be happening here that's going to be any good. We keep going the way we're going, which is doing nothing. I mean, in large part, there's no way that you're sitting in a river going down a boat. There's no way that boat's not going over that waterfall. That's where we're at right now. So what do? Do you turn that boat around, try to paddle upstream, or do you just kind of paddle in a direction to get you back to the shore at least, and hopefully fast enough to get you to the side? And we can avoid your world changing in ways, I say all of our, as long as we're going to be alive here, all of our world, anybody still alive will start being changed in ways you can't even understand. And I don't know how many people, I mean, we all recognize things like that, but we're not really taking the time to make it important and try to do something about it, and getting beyond our ideas of what we think would work and wouldn't work, or getting beyond our past experience where we didn't change to try and make a change to make it work, and figure it out. And I guess I say that with the different perspective. A lot of people, I know a lot of people that got hurt really bad, and I kind of watched their example and didn't go that way. And it seems that the way I've chosen, as I've seen it, has gotten me to places in my perspective of things and how it works and how it really does start to cause change. And I don't mean change for the sake of change, for the sake of rooting out this psychopathic sickness that we have in our society, and that we kind of let in. As I say, it's, that you have a republic if you can keep it, and we didn't. We haven't, and we really didn't know much more. And all these people that were in the seats of decision, they really did a good job at keeping us thinking that they were on the job. And now it's gotten to the point where we think that the government was an authority. And it really isn't, actually. And it's hard. I always get to the point where I get frustrated listening to people talk about this stuff in the internet and on their opinions and the podcasts and the whatever. It's just it's almost fabricating things just to evade the actual ability to go back after what we were supposed to do in order to keep what we have, so someone doesn't come and steal it. And that's the bottom line in the world. I don't like it. I don't like that someone's out there to steal from us, no matter what they look like when they come and do it. But we've allowed that to get to a point where that's now what they tell you is the new normal. This can't be the new normal. This is just what they want you to believe is something they call what you're going to keep, the way you're going to be treated, and that's only as long as you keep letting it happen. Be that just to say, yeah, we see it and do nothing, or don't even see it and do nothing, or think you're doing something but doing it the wrong way. And so we're out of options of doing it anything other than the right way, I guess. I don't know about the right way. I want to say right way because I see a difference in what I've been doing. And the more I work with people, the more I realize myself, I really have a different path. I don't know what happened, and I don't know why it's so different. It's really only what I see needs to happen, and that just explains to me maybe how far off the mark all of us are, and how much work it takes to get back to the place where we ought to be, and then to work from there. And once we get to the place we ought to be, and we start working from there, that's why I say we can do this, but we're going to have to do this. And we're the only ones that can do it. And unless we do it, all this nonsense that's been uncovered, with all the different alternative media, the truthers, all these nonsense groups that come together to try and show they're the ones, that they're exposing a lot of problems, but it's not into the point of really being able to do anything with it. And then a lot of it gets infiltrated to keep you involved in a lot of discussion that's just absolutely wasteful and just completely irrelevant to what actually has to be done if your intention is to stop the abuse that's going on that makes you have the attitudes that you have contrary to a system. That system is there for a reason, good, bad, or indifferent. And when I started looking at the black and white, well, I keep telling you over and over, read the black and white, get those words in your eyes. There's lots of reasons more than just reading it. It tunes your mind up to what you're up against, but it also tunes your mind up to the exactness of what you're up against. And unless you see that exactness is their weakness. Where it's a weakness, it could be a strength, and then you find out the strength is actually consistent with the good stuff. Again, we hear the adage, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're running across that right now. I just ran across it here. I told my guys, I said, the guys I work with, and I say, guys, I don't have many women that work, that have a passion to go after this. This is really one of those things I've also noticed. There's a natural thing going on here about men having to fight against this, and the women I've noticed are vicious, ferocious, and vicious against the oppression. But they don't last too long, and the only thing I can figure is that it really beats down on the psyche of a woman to find out that there's no protection, and the men aren't doing it. But they're like the mama bear. They come out and they're just ferocious all over the problem, and then the system just wears them down. And I can just tell you the number of women that I've seen and done had go at this on their own. I've watched them literally go insane. They go nuts, and you lose people. And I find that interesting. This is not a joke. What happens? Does that mean that the women can't? Absolutely not. They can. They just fight. You just can't fight this thing that we're up against with the expectation of anything other than you're in a criminal environment. And it's perpetual until we get to stop it. And the women are very good at sitting in the places of administration, focused on the things they need to do, that they get in the places where they aren't and cannot be attacked. And I don't want to sound, they want to talk about how we sound sexist or whatever, gender biased or whatever. Forget all that nonsense. There's realities I've witnessed, folks. There's 3 decades of watching people get destroyed by the system we're up against to try and stop. And I'm addressing it. I don't know about all the adages that people bring up to try and do whatever they want to do. I've heard lots of things being said. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't do it this way. You can't stop the can'ts. So figure out how to do it. I do have a little path that I've carved for myself, maybe, but it works for others. And so the path we're carving is getting a little bit larger and a little bit larger. And in fact, where I find, let's put it back into where do women work best? They work best where they really can be guided to have the decisions to make. They're like a secret weapon in a way. There is a bias out there in people's minds, and we don't use it, but it ends up being used. A woman goes into these places of office, and you got these bar members that are the males, and they think that they run the show. And then we come along and we give the seated decision, the power and the knowledge and the black and white, and destroy that structure of control. It's not instantaneous. There is a dynamic that goes on, and I've had to talk to myself a lot to say be patient with it. But the battle is a long-term war, and you need to step into it that way. And the only way you understand what you're up against is reading the words. And you understand who these people are, what they're after, and you also understand, you finally learn what you're after and how it's already sitting in the system for the most part to use. And we then use it. And to further the next point that I kind of just moved on from, like I told the guys, I said, we're going to change just a bit on this one new issue. We've been fighting this for quite a while now. But new information just came up. We're now going to embrace the sustainable development. And you should have heard the response. What? Yeah, we're going to embrace the sustainable development. And I'm going to embrace the sustainable development, so I'm going to use it as a club to beat the other half. And that's what we found. I found some information that purports to come from sustainable development. That's a treaty. That we're going to use that treaty to beat down the other people working domestic terrorists to take out valuable and proper infrastructure and property rights. That you have to be fluid in this battle, and you have to be willing to look and not be cloistered in your own prejudices. I just got to remind you about that. That's why you read the black and white. You get those words in your eyes about what they're doing. Then you find out the stuff they're not telling you that's been there before them, and you say, wow, that's supposed to be what's really honored, and they're not doing that. And I told you that my beginnings were out of no choice of my own. Just happened to find myself in a university law library at the law in front of Benedict's on Admiralty. That was my first inclination into all this stuff after I got the rose-colored glasses slapped from my face, wanting to know where the heck did America go? Why can't I just travel down the road? That's when I had everything correct, folks. It still happens. That's what the big shock was. There was no way. I learned back then there was going to be no way you can do it correctly. So then that was in light of the authorita that wanted to rule your life. It doesn't mean that you aren't going to do it correctly. It means they're not going to recognize any. And that was their weakness eventually, and it has been. You walked in front of Benedict on Admiralty. Admiralty is essentially the reflection of international law. It's quite a study. I read 3/4 of the volumes. It's like a bigger than an Encyclopedia Britannica. I've told you before, don't ask me to repeat it. I just know what I read. I don't remember how I read it or what it was. I just know it was there. It's rode with me for 3 decades, and guess what? It's coming back out. And we're starting to use international law now to show how absolutely criminal these people are that work inside, the domestic criminals inside the borders. And y'all say, I've heard it say, well, who's going to be checking those? Well, we're going to take them all out, folks. We're going to expose everybody. What we need is the audience to see and witness that fact. We're not going, I've told you, you don't go to the court to get justice. It's a criminal syndicate, so you take it out. And there's tools the tools that you do it. I told you I've done it now twice for absolutely the same way, using the same tool. Does it give us justice? Well, how can you expect justice when the entirety of your government is a criminal syndicate? We have some work to do here, folks. And it's not going to be me talking behind the woodshed to y'all. And I absolutely appreciate everyone who gets a lot of value from what I say and can put it in context in their life. It's going to be you have to go beyond that, though. As a good friend of mine's now, he's come on to it. He sees it, like we talk about the mining law. I told him a long time ago, your mining law just gives you the black and white of what you're supposed to be entitled to here by grant. It isn't how you're going to have it enforced, and when you start enforcing that, it won't be speaking the mining law. The mining law sits there silent. That's what your power is, quietly sitting back there. But when you address these people, that's a wholly different study. That's a wholly different action. And he's starting to find that out as they attempt to try and come against him, although it wasn't. It's a paper tiger, and that's how we treat it. He's not going, at this point, and I don't see how in the future he's going to be, he's not going to be the poster child for the government abuse. And the way I've watched it work, you do the jiu-jitsu move on them. All of a sudden now they're underneath the felony. Where do you go with it? That's a valid question, but it's really unimportant because the entirety of the system has become a criminal syndicate. And if you expected to live in a constitutional republic or a place that respected you or respected your rights or respected anything you had to do and how you went about it, you got to have some respect for yourself to find out that there's people in the world that weren't going to give it to you if you let them. So again, as I start into the broadcast, I got all things to talk about on my tabs to remind me on all the little subject matter areas we can go to show you how screwed up it is and what to do about it. Sometimes I attempt to bring my ideas for you on how I would address certain things, and yet I start the broadcast just seconds before all of a sudden I get this dialogue starting in my head, and you just heard it. I mean, it doesn't even start where I was going to go. But it was important. And if you understand what I've been trying to say, it's not something we sit back on. And the tools are right there for us to use to out. This thing has been the corruption has been long before us. Don't expect that you're going to just jump in and have the silver bullet. I certainly wished for that before. Folks, I spent years, literally years. I read, for those of you who may have done it, and I think I've told you this before, not recently though, it took me, how dense I am at some point, how unnatural this is. and I just forgot. See, I went off totally. I need to give you a code, I suppose. The BTWRLM158 is this event, an episode behind the Woodshed. BTWRLM158. I understand that worked pretty well for some people, so I did it too. I dropped in the last number and put in Blogcaster, and that Blogcaster came right up, right on top. So that was pretty cool. But getting back to the subject matter here, the whole of this action that we have to do is based on a knowledge set, on things we've never been told and weren't going to be told, and incomplete information that we have to make more complete, in a tactic that's changed over time and works by plan, which makes it simple at some level, that we have to engage, otherwise we will not have what we think we have. And it looks exactly the way all y'all that are defeatists say. They have you all working in the direction they need you to be working in your mind. And as I say, thinking about things, about what do you do inside and whatever, we're not changing the system inside. What we're doing is we're saying there's a black and white constraint, there's a black and white obligation and duty in the government officials, and we are going to show you that that's what the constraint is, and get the good people in that will maintain that constraint. We're not changing the vessel of the government. We're changing those inside it, and those that are influencing those inside it, to be what it was supposed to be. Now we're up against formidable foes. We're up against those that are in their mind elite, trained. And I've named now the Bar Association is one trade union profession running your lives. Literally have co-opted your whole entire government, folks. If you haven't seen this, it's right there. Not by just them acting in these positions. They have literally done it in black and white. I can find it for you anywhere if you want to go look. We talk about it pretty much, periodically and a lot. It's not a joke when we talk about the Model Business Corporation Act being at least adopted directly in 26 states of the United States, which is what being run through. The rest adopted parts of it, and then they went through the monetary side, which is what I think is really what's driving this. It happened all right in time for the amendment to the 1954 Tax Act, a federal tax, and it happened right in time, and everything that they did in 1953, and this was across the states, was identical to what the new tax requirements, the tax obligations were from changing from the 1939 tax laws to the 1954 tax laws. Everything that the Model Business Corporation Act changed is what the new tax law was demanding. One of which is to make records and keep books. The states have to make records and keep books. I should tell you something. So it's all findable what this thing is that we're up against. So now we've been throwing it back in their face, and now I'm getting to the point where I'm going back to international law. We're actually finding treaties that purport to come through sustainable development that I can use as a club to beat to beat the insurrection inside the United States down. And how did I find this? Trying to give you an idea. I just keep my mind open to things. We're doing so many things, but an article would be sent to me. I'll read it for the context. It may be in a general subject matter. And in this case, one little sentence popped up in a paragraph. And I looked at that sentence and it just flashed a whole idea. I said, if that exists in its ratified treaty, and I assume I know what it's talking about by its term, I can use that. And sure enough, over about 2 hours of study, and only surface study, it still needs to be researched. It appears we have a treaty now to use against these people that are going against productive uses of the land and particular water, irrigation, and farming. And they claim it to be under sustainable development, yet it's actually following United States property law. When you look at it, when you see that it mentions in the United States reserved its own measures that met this desertification treaty, I'll name it, you'll see that the United States property imposition is already, because water is appropriated as a property in the United States, probably not anywhere else that I know of. I don't know of many places that it is. Again, United States property law and soil disposition is unique in the world. And so we start applying these basic things, things I keep talking to you about, things I hear people talking about no matter where I hear it. You're not putting together these very fundamental facts that you need to hold and never forget and be foundational with. And lots of discussion gets made that's completely off of mark, a completely discussion you don't even have to have when you have the foundation. For example, and what's the word? I don't want to disrespect him at all. Right before the broadcast was Colbert bringing up the idea, what about the roads? Who's going to pay for the roads? And this anarchist nonsense thought. And then somebody, well, what about we bring it to stairwells so that we have publicly owned stairwells and the owners can't shut you down. Well, folks, if you understand property law, you have the right of ingress and egress to every property you have a contract for. In fact, the roads and highways in the United States were all created by people. They were done underneath the knowledge that it wasn't their own stuff, they just need to create it. The governments were never involved. That's what the mining law shows us. It's what the 1866 Act, Section 8, grants a pre-existing claim of possession by Congress to the people to make roads, highways they call them, for all lawful uses. There was no, the government would just, and why? Because the states ceded the land to get the disposition going, free of any encumbrance in the future. Now you start understanding that every property you have to go to, whether that's an apartment complex or a property or a lot or whatever, has a right of ingress and egress. You don't have these discussions. And to have the discussions and to go look for them is a waste of time, and it admits you haven't looked at the basics. This is not that hard to figure out. And for as many people as I hear say they do all the research, in these areas I can immediately hear the failure. It's not even worth talking about. You're wasting time to talk about whether or not you need to, even as a spin-off idea to show how ridiculous the point would be, it didn't hit the foundation to say, well, maybe we need to make stairwells at apartment complexes common. They are common, but they're common to the people who have the right of access. So there's lots of answers already in our face to use that we had completely run away from. And when we do that, we allow the other side, which is usually the attorneys, because they're the ones that have all the knowledge about the legal, they win the day. And so I hear it lately, and I've got to be careful, but I'm really get disappointed. I hear lots of people, again, as I said last week, I don't know if people really listen to what I'm saying. When you get down to the foundation, a lot of this stuff is not a question. I'm not going into the system and saying we're going to change the system. No, all we're doing is saying, well, that system looked pretty good when you look at it objectively. It's been adulterated. But what we need to do is out the criminals, and then get them out. But that's not going to be one or two people. It's not going to even be maybe even a handful at 6, 5 or 6 of us. Not 10. It's going to take a lot more now. I think the foot race that we were in, we may be on the edge of losing that. So it's going to take a whole lot more. The bleachers are going to have to empty on this result. But it's going to take the witness of a lot of people who know foundational things that don't start conversations that are outside of what we need to do. And it's in part, I don't even know, I was thinking the other day, I don't even know if I can really talk with anybody normally. It's so prevalent in my mind that I've got to focus on this stuff, otherwise I know they're gonna win that race. I don't even know if I can be social anymore that way. I'm not a bad guy, I don't talk bad, I just have no purpose to speak about things. I'd like to, but that would take me away from what I can see so clearly needs to be done. It's something I've dedicated myself to. And I don't even know if that, I always have questions of what do you do? Was it worth it? And all I can say is I was there doing what I could do the best and the most I could do. And getting over back, let's say Grandma Mary, I think if I'm correct and she hasn't changed her opinion of doing this to run for office, if she's in a county position, and a county commissioner, and she has any public lands in her county, I already know what they're violating people. If Kansas is a place, and I don't see that it is, so it may not be a big deal here, but if Kansas has any economy it derives or rights, and I know that if it's public land that there's at least miners and loggers that might be out there that would be deriving funds, and I know if there's logs then there's probably going to be revenue to the county, more than likely that's being mishandled by the federal government. And so all you do, you go in and there's a in the Federal Land Management Act, there's a provision for this coordination that you can do it wrong and they get you to do it wrong. That if you know how to do it right, you start to bring this thing around, and all of a sudden now you're bringing in whatever that public land might be. You're doing it right to bring in what that public land was supposed to give to the counties. So you're not changing the structure, you're making it work within the law, the thing that was adulterated. That you, being the one that sees that, you can bring a lot of change, a monstrous change, just by being one, even though you need a quorum. The one can bring the rest, and then bring the embarrassment on the others for not doing the obligations and duties. So some people are wired to do political office. I'm not that type, but I know that there are some, and we work with those. I work very well with those people. But they have a sight in their mind about there's a wrong that they want to make right. I've got a group of people that I can offer information to those people to say, here's how it's been done wrong. You just fix that, and we'll see this thing change around. Then we'll look at what's remaining in wrong, instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater and try to make new philosophies about how it all don't work. There's a way it was supposed to work. And in some regards, I can tell you, I can look at these land disposal laws that Congress has done, and someone did it right. At least to that agreement when the states were formed. And I know I'm not even looking at it, but I know there's lots of people that will do lots of chat conversation. I look at some of it later, and I just tell you, folks, you don't have it. Your quick responses about how all that won't work, I don't even have time to explain it. There's a foundational discussion that can be had that eliminates a lot of what I see being chatted about how what I'm saying won't work or doesn't work, or what you're doing, what you think you're doing, how it's not going to happen, how it's walking into the system and trying to ask them for an opinion. Then you're not listening to me, because we're not asking for anybody's opinion. We're not asking for a permission. We're imposing and outing anybody who doesn't do the black and white, stay right on the narrow path of the obligations and duties of the government as it was meant to be by the black and white's own statement. And we out what has been an adulteration to that. And guess who we start attacking almost immediately? It's every time so far. The Bar Association members. They absolutely are clueless at one end and they're hurtful on another. And it's easy to hit them pretty hard in these aspects, that if you're never going to do that behind a keyboard, and that's all. You're never going to do that by having an attitude you have nothing to do and nothing to say, and there's no purpose to change the system and no way to do it. I'm not saying change the system. I'm saying going to make it work the way it was supposed to work. And I only have a very narrow view. I mean, I certainly cannot believe that I understand all of it. I certainly can't understand all of it. Certainly we have this idea about the monetary and fiscal system. There's two different parts to this. That's a kind of an outstanding type thing that we also have to deal with. But as I said before, no matter what system you're in with the way the laws are, if the county is getting returns from things that the law provide to the county, at least your landed people aren't going to be taxed out of existence on some leveraged funding type of grant stream funding through this Agenda 21 under any fiscal and monetary system. And so there's some mitigation that can go on as well that may be beyond me to actually analyze for, because there's lots of stuff I don't understand. I just see the tips of things that may not make any sense sometimes, or maybe the things that do make sense. And I try to bring those out just to give us some anticipatory advantage, because that's really part of what this is also. Always looking to see always being a moving target. If you're going to be a target, be a moving one. They can't hit you so easy. And then if you're on substantive protections and shields, they can't touch you. Even if they can try and shoot you, they try to shoot you down on what your ideas are. They can't hit you because you're always on a substantive point. You got a tougher piece of machinery that's working, and you got a more accurate one. And it's like Iraqi army versus the United States military. There's kind of these correlations. I keep telling you, there's mirrors I see as we go through. So let me get on to the tabs finally and bring you up to speed from last week, and anticipatory and making speed, talking about certain things. Talked about the MK Ultra position and last week about how what they're doing to our minds and this and that. It's not a do dangerous things behind the woodshed. It doesn't seem like it, but we always may have put ourselves at risk. But that's sometimes what you have to do, even if we find out after the fact. New York Times reporter found dead after exposing MK Ultra. Sarah Kershaw was found asphyxiated due to strangulation on Monday at her apartment at Sosua. The Project MKUltra, often referred to as CIA's mind control program, was the code name given to the illegal program of experiments on human subjects designed and undertaken by the CIA. Ms. Kershaw published an article with the New York Times exploring its subject in 2008 with her article, Sharing Their Demons on the Web. So this woman talking about MKUltra and the way that you're being mind controlled and the possibilities, and we were talking about frequency generations and these things in the news of the fantastic science that's coming on, the technology is already there for you to be worked on, and these programs were dealing with touching you with electrodes, and I was telling you that's gone well beyond that now, and I exampled the rat wagging the human with the experiment that's already been done, where they don't have any contact to your brain, but they do have electrodes that pick it up. So we find out this might be dangerous stuff to be talking with, and you'd kind of think it was. Who knows? Wasn't there. You know, there's a coincidence. Does it mean something? Well, I guess we can put some meaning. The point is, the technology's there. Whether or not she's involved, it's a serious enough business that people put it together. Helicopter tests for radiation above Boston Marathon route I found fascinating. Why does this even come out? And what I wanted to point out, not the fact that they're measuring radiation over the Boston Marathon, which was another psyop. They're going to try and, the marathon bombing, they're going to try and do all that stuff, the Boston bombing. But what I found fascinating was that this helicopter goes around, flies 150 feet off the ground and picks up normal signs of radiation like our medical facilities and construction sites that use x-ray machines. That's really all I found important on there for me. I'm telling you again, here's more evidence that you live in an irradiated land and that Fukushima was blamed for all that. It's a scapegoat. Another mythical beast was used to try to inform you live in a irradiated land. Now this 150 feet away, they're measuring these radiations. They only give you two. I told you there's dozens and dozens of sources anymore. Notwithstanding maybe the long-term stuff that was used in bombs that had no controls. So it's on. When you look at causation, you can't not think about this that they don't really talk about. We talked about the information that along in your fabrics before. I was telling you that the technocracy is the tool they're going to use, and so the technocrats and the technology comes along to advance, and particularly these things that they will need. And sure enough, we talked about it before. They were trying to refine the technology to put sensors in your clothes. And this story pops up within the week here. Clothes that receive and transmit data information are closer to reality, and they've figured out how to do, again, not in commerce yet, but they've figured out how to do embroidery thread, which can make any pattern that they want to embroider, machine programmed to make antennas. Now the one that they've now been able to reduce down to 6 inches. They show a big spiral. They can embroider this on the back of your shirt. They actually talk about it. They talk about using this antenna to be able to transmit and pick up biological information and digital information, and it's really on the it's on the shirt on your back now. And this is a 6-inch antenna. This is a pretty big power monger here. This thing will go quite a distance to transmit and receive now, and they're working it out. Now I don't understand how you're gonna, if you can't handle a phone against your head, I don't know how you're gonna handle this irradiated antenna on your back. But this is what they're doing. Now remember, we talked about last week. They had two sources of infrared laser light, which I told you is only slightly removed in the microwave. It's just a band tidal distinction, just right next door. That they're talking about putting that frequency on your back, and they're going to get this even smaller. This is actually I can tell you that I've seen antennas much more capable than these. These are just what they're telling you, and the stuff I know about is back in the 80s. That's what I worked on. That was one of the things we worked on, was how to transmit and receive data at a distance. And what I worked on, it was kind of cool, was as I understood it at the time, was the first programmable heart pacemaker. That's what the R&D was that I mostly worked on. That's what I was telling you. That chip, I got myself in a little bit of trouble. I saw a glitch in the circuit, and I actually got in a lot of trouble, but I actually proved out my hunch, my intuition, my one slight observation, just an off observation, showed me there was a problem with this circuit. And this is when you had to wire wrap everything. This is long. The board I was wire wrapping was like 6-7 feet long, something like that. And this is what we had. At any rate, different technology at the time. It was changing at the time I was in. But we had antennas that would be much more efficient than they are showing here for embroidery. And this is 30 so years ago or so. Something I don't know. Time's flying, buzzing in my head. I don't know. The time flies. But it's here. They're right in the news, folks. They're now working on technology that's going to be following you around and be able to get this big data information, and you're part in the system, and it's all here, folks. I'll just tell you, it's going to be the clothes you wear. Pretty soon you're not going to even see it. It's not going to be embroidered stuff. Again, fascinating technology, but I don't know if I want it around me when I start looking and knowing what it's actually doing. And anyway, just letting you know, we got MK Ultra. They're talking about electrodes in your brain, programming your awareness, changing your awareness. Now we see the clothing that's where they're now figuring out how to make it smaller and actually put it in embroidery thread. It's all here, folks, right here. They don't have to touch you no more. These microwave frequencies, they can just adjust any frequencies. They actually talked about a different type of a one that had 3 or 4 different wideband microwave transmitting antenna. That was more of the ones I know of. They're smaller, and inside the antenna you have different notches and shapes, and then they do different frequencies, and you can do wideband that way. Well, I told you, they told you in the article. I didn't say it. The article told us all they need is 2 different frequencies, and they can create this problem for us. And they've got now it up to this one antenna. They were showing at least 5 bands within a frame of frequency. So you explain to me what kind of a dimensioning world are they making holographic in your body, let alone just your brain? Let your mind wander. I mean, what do I know? I'm just behind a woodshed looking at this wonder. A Swiss bank whistleblower claims Panama Papers was a CIA operation. Folks, you heard it behind the woodshed last week before this was put in. Did it take a whistleblower to figure out this is a CIA operation? I went through it last week. Not so hard to see anymore. No, who's pushing the buttons and why? They still might be open. The point is, this is for your consumption. It's a one lawyer group that they want you to focus on. Folks, it's just the setup is right here. So it's admitted. It confirms what I told you. I'm not a whistleblower. I guess I should be from behind the woodshed. That's what we get to see at a distance. We get to see how this thing works. Why? It's not because we're ever going to have the ability to be involved. We're not involved with that, but it will affect your life because the governments came right after that. And what are they doing? They're locking up all this stuff, as I told you they would, and it'll be refined even further. You're going to be refining out even more of the people that I told you you need to take the so-called straw man you think you know, maybe even fabricate other ones. Just give them a name. They all have different kinds of names. GM is a straw man as well, right? You can give them any kind of name and nest them like the Russian doll, and you too can be an oligarch. Well, given you get the proper funding. But at any rate, the point is you can look like an oligarch. And that's what this is all about, curbing. You're finding out maybe too late, but still do it, because it's still if you keep paying attention, there's always going to be a loophole for the refiners, the ones that refine this against us. But a confirmation of another guy, whistleblowers, who says it could be. Okay, so no, not even the whistleblower has proof, and this is the kind of little thing you say, okay, this is just another player on the stage. If it's a whistleblower, he'd have more than just a conjecture, wouldn't he? But reasonable minds can come together. I suppose I'm a reasonable mind. I better hope to be for myself. I'm not denying anybody else out there as a listener, or anybody that won't ever listen, that we can all look at this, and he came up with that as a whistleblower, that we come up with that without being a whistleblower tells you it's pretty much what it is. You too can be an oligarch, at least on paper, and I've told you you need to. You need to work through that shield. That's the world. That's the new world. So why not, like I said, embrace the sustainable development? We're going to use it to club the other part of it. We can embrace the legalisms of this if you know what you're doing. You really have to pay attention, though. So this is not a license for you to go out and do it, but I'm suggesting to you there's a path to do that. You work everything through that that structure that you build for yourself. Don't leave it up to the government to do it for you. There's a case law for all y'all that go off. I mean, it's this simple. It told us before, you don't create the alternative reality, the government will presume one upon you. And if you don't create a place where you can exist outside of their residency structure, they'll presume that upon you, and they'll presume it in Washington, D.C. If you didn't quite understand what a resident was and why, when I keep telling you they're aliens doing business in a state, how that alienshipness works, it's really right in front of us how that works. So what happens, we go on and we see the exposure of the Panama Papers, just an excuse to bring in the next things and what comes up. And also at the same time, remember, it was just a thought. I could see the writing. There was writings out there that told us that April was going to be an interesting month financially. Corporations were preparing. China was preparing. And that's probably the bigger elephant in the room, China doing whatever in the financial monetary system at all, that they were claiming to downturn certain things. Well, this week it's now their economy's upturned. All this nonsense goes on. But serious things happening in April that we also talked about. What might it be? Well, Obama reveals that he will discuss with Janet Yellen certain things, and it ends up being pretty serious. I think it was three secret meetings. They're private meetings with the Fed and the president, and I understand that the vice president was involved in these meetings. Folks, you don't have the president and the vice president in the same room. When they're in the same room, there's something serious going on. What it ends up being and whether we can see it, I don't know, but that's something serious. When they do them both together, that's typically national security stuff. And so I looked at this little story and said, wow, maybe this is the April thing that they were given Telegraph about. Well, there's other things that would have been in the news before about April. If I was had more time, I'm sure I could find it. Once I was on the key of this, when I was lined in on it, I could find lots of stuff once I was focused on it. And you can too. I mean, this stuff you can pick it up. And you can anticipate, and this might be a real serious one for us. That's why I'm even speaking about it. Otherwise, this is just what the global financial structure and monetary system is working with. That we were told back when, and then again reminded, the Shanghai shock of April 19th, 2016, the yuan-based gold standard was coming to this week coming up. China had confirmed that they were going to announce it. Now, I didn't follow so close. My point is, this was maybe the thing that they saw. This gold standard attached to the yuan, while China makes its own settlements bank, its settlements condition to meet up with the SWIFT payment system and the global payment system. And you'll understand if you look at global monetization and Admiralty law, that international law I read, Benedict's on Admiralty, it mentions a lot about money. So the Admiralty is based in commerce as well. Not just military, which is probably the primary focus, but the business of the military, and then commerce, maritime is commerce, and they're all pretty much the same, but there's subtle differences. That this was about payment and settlements of debts across nations a lot of times, going through and funneled through merchants. And now the Trading with the Enemy Act now you see that's the merchanting stuff. So that was back in 1917. And 1933, the act that removed the exception to citizens of the United States, which were the corporations doing business. And then we have that war that has not been modified even after they got rid of all the war thing, the war power thing. So Shanghai shock was a report on April 19th. That's 2 days away, folks. Pretty fascinating things to watch for. In a way, I wish I was a little more knowledgeable about this, but not so much. I mean, you got to have something in the world to have it affect you. The thing that we have is we have our need to eat and our things that we need to buy, and that's probably what our biggest thing is here. But remember also, as I saw April 19th, this is the frame. I forgot all about this, but it occurred to me when I was looking at this number. Isn't it the 19th, 20th, and 21st of April that all the internet goes wild about the occult? And what dastardly deeds will happen at a high percentage rate on these days. So I find that to be highly coincidental. Pay attention. It's coming. It's right. I had to look and I said, I got 2 more days to warn my listeners. Don't know what you're going to do. Don't know how it affects you. But there's all the words that we had going into months before going into April, that major corporations were taking major moves and preparing for something in April. It's all, again, there's a lot of information that something really, really big is happening. And to have it was kind of a striking thing to hear that the vice president was involved with these meetings as well. So there may be something serious going on, and some other stories pop up which may make that even more relevant to us. Now, I guess just quickly, what happens is if we start going into devaluation of the Federal Reserve note to balance this out, your money's going to be worth less and less. They can start this Weimar Republic thing on you, and pretty soon, overnight, your money's not worth anything to buy anything if it's in Federal Reserve notes. So that's a clue, not an advice, although maybe an advice. Now we're getting really close. I don't know. There's a lot of indicators that we need to pay attention to. If you have something to lose, you better really look closely here. I'm just giving you the warning here. You are better prepared to look at this than I would. So I'm just letting you know that this may be one of those moments. I don't do this too often, that you really focus in on your financials, your setup. Make sure your eggs are not in one basket either, but make sure that you got some quick move and that you can do, and maybe do it before. Set yourself right before. Entire Swiss branch of Rothschild banking empire under criminal investigation following David de Rothschild's conspiracy indictment. So this is a real thing, indictment for conspiracy. They're going, apparently someone's going after this Rothschild bank. It's just really a subsidiary when you read the story. It's taken many years to bring this case against Rothschild and his company, the Rothschild's Financial Services Group, which trapped hundreds of pensioners in a bogus loan scheme between the years of 2005, excuse me. I've got lots of zeros, I guess, in my head, and 2008. Rothschild unionizes with Rockefeller to congeal funds in 2012 is their subject matter of their interest, and so they're going after these people right now in the news. Not sure how this is going to work out. You know, there's always going to be a threat behind the scenes, but this is public to us that somebody did an official thing against this, all at the same time, folks. So Deutsche Bank admits it's rigged gold prices, that the bank itself rigged gold prices, and agrees to expose other manipulators. It actually was, the first report was on silver. Remember, I've been saying the fix is in. When they told us the London gold fix, I said that, well, that's the fix. That's the They're telling you the fix is in. It's on the whole entire market. And so a bank finally admits, this is a big deal here, that they admit to this, to out other manipulators. It's probably going to come over to the United States if that follows through, but it started in silver. And then the bank alluded to a gold fix. And so for all of us looking at the markets, and they've commoditized these metals, and couldn't understand why the money is, the money isn't valued the way it should be, and the supply and demand markets seem to be even in that were on its head. Well, here's the final truth of all of us that said it. Now we have the admission. So if your markets and your values and all your life, whatever life you have that's financial or monetary in your life that you've worked for, has been all your life been manipulated, you better pay attention. And this is the time of that was focusing. This is the month. We're already halfway through it. This is the month that the companies and the global companies and nations were focusing on months and months ago that I warned you about. I didn't quite know, but here's too much information all at once coming down this week to kind of give us a heads up, a really big one. And then this little story about the 28 pages in the Senate or Congressional report on 9/11 and who was involved, and now the meme goes out that there's some secrecy in the 28 pages you're not going to see. Well, there's a whole lot that we're not seeing, but okay. So then they pointed, Trump kind of said, when I become president, we'll find out it's Saudi or maybe Saudi Arabia. Well, that was the pumping. See, now he's involved with all this as well. That the meme is 28 pages holds the idea that Saudi Arabia is the one who did 9/11. Now, obviously, they didn't do 9/11 on their own. So this is another untold story that'll probably never come to light. I don't know what these 28 pages hold. I do know they can use this at any time up against Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia moved this week to threaten back. Now, I don't know. It seemed like a hollow threat to me, but they still moved before this issue came out. Saudi Arabia threatens to liquidate its treasury holdings if Congress probes its role in the September 11th attacks. Well, if probes, I thought the 28 pages held the fact. So we got lots of discrepancy here, but they're moving to say that they've got something just short of $1 trillion in treasuries that they want to dump on the market, which my thought was immediate was if these people are the even if we want to focus on them as part of the 9/11 terrorists group, we would just hold their funds, wouldn't we, as terrorists? You don't even need a probe. We just hold their funds so that they don't threaten with $1 trillion, dumping $1 trillion of treasuries into the market. Why? Because that starts to work on your value at home. Now, I don't believe any of it because it's all a big puff and smoke, but this is the theory that they work on, that they want you to start focusing on. It may very well be Saudi Arabia has something to do. I want you never to forget. They say don't forget, never forget, folks. They didn't do it alone. Those buildings didn't come down by airplanes. As I told you, they went and done it. They went and done the plan that was told to us back in the court cases, more proof in the court cases in 1987. They went and done what was in the plans that the FBI already knew about in 1987. That wasn't done by just the Saudis. And then you find out who's supporting the Saudis and who's paying for them. All this could be over. As soon as we want to go and make war on Saudi or take their oil, this is the paperwork that can do it, I suppose. More importantly, this is the thing that can hide from you who actually allowed and done it. Whatever's in these papers, you're seeing the telegraphing of what's going on, but more importantly to you, this is to do with your financial securities here, your security in what you're doing, how you're going to do it, what things are going to cost you. It's all kind of topsy-turvy, so I don't even begin to do the analysis of whether or not when this happens actually prices start to go down or not. And so some of your raising of the dollar, your bucks are okay, but again, against your silver, your silver coins, possibly, I think better right now, silver coins would balance, as I said long time ago in 2009, late 2009, I said that should balance out this commodification of your life by getting into commodities and moving that in as money like it used to. And so what's the most natural but to take that silver as money that was made money with silver in it and adopt that now as your medium of exchange. But right after this Saudi condition where they're going to threaten the United States for exposing the 9/11, which is really, there's a whole other thing going on behind all that. But CIA agents are working for the U.S. With 15 Saudi hijackers, was what a scholar says, and he's got his little report. Now, more pulling more information out. Gentleman's named Kevin Barrett, an American academic who has been studying the events of 9/11 since 2003, makes this hijackers from Saudi Arabia were CIA agents working with the United States government. And so, all this stuff sits in there to be known, or we already surmise. The point is, it didn't just happen by 19 box cutters, folks. It just didn't. I told you I really didn't want to. Yeah, I'd like to know, but I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time. You got some psychopaths in the world that are willing to do this. On 3,000 deaths, they committed 3,000 deaths that gave them leverage to go kill millions. I don't know where the moral obligation finally rests, but we can't remain silent on the fact that they went and done it and used the same method over and over, and I hear crickets. We got to stop being the crickets. Whatever the 28 pages says, whatever they got us focused on now while they go and destroy the way you live and what does affect you, hacking your life at every turn because we thought they were doing it right, that we gave it over to the authorita and didn't realize the authorita was not really there and it was always in the people. They keep telling us that, and that was what I keep telling you. If you can keep it, you have to keep this. This is not something that you get to give away if you expect the lifestyle that you all claim you want, which is to be left alone. I see that in the law, absolutely see it, right in the law. We're to be left alone in the United States of America. And how far we are not should show you how far out us, let it go criminal. That the criminal will take advantage at every turn. So we're being told things here, but they do have fundamental application. Whatever the purpose is, I'm not completely sure. I can see tons of purpose in lots of ways, that most of which doesn't look like it's going to help any of the people any, but will continue this adulteration away from what we the people may, if we got together and were able to discuss it amongst ourselves, we probably most likely would come to a completely alternative and different response. And if we don't have that response, they're going to continue the way they have. The world that we want, folks, they keep telling us, and it's them, not us, that they keep bringing this thing on us, and now they're coming to the time, and I don't know, but you are looking at some very if the yuan goes to gold, I just can't understand how the nothing backed dollar can hold its prominence, especially when they tie that system over to the SWIFT payment system. There has to be a reckoning, folks. And the fix is in, so you really can't claim, just because they do that means gold's going up. In fact, on the news, all the markets went down, or they spiked and then they dropped again. And so just to get to the point about this monetary thing, folks, I don't know what to say. I could just be quiet on it, but I think if you have anything extra, this may be the time, and like I said, I hesitate to say all this, but this may be the time to think this is important timing to transfer any FRNs you have into silver money, the coins. And I was looking around. There's nothing much behind the woodshed that I could actually do what I need to do to make it work. But if you're looking to do, let's say, $100 face value, what they call junk coins, which are simply silver money, it appears that you're going to be having to come up with as much as $1,500 or a little bit more, and maybe as cheap as $1,200 or so, I might find. But you may want to consider that. And I don't know too much more, just what I could quickly check. It looked like the silver dollars were probably more favorable in their silver content, being that's what you're actually paying for. You might as well get as much silver content as you can. But you're going to probably want to now get your money out of FRNs. Why? Because if this is real, and they use all this, and this is a national security problem, what's going on with China, and you're watching this fabricated puff and smoke of an economy, and if the ill wind blows, folks, you're going to be sitting there with these paper dollars that are going to fly away. They're actually going to they are going to fly away in value, but you're going to need, like we've been told about the Weimar Republic. You need more and more and more. They've been telling us. They talk about it in Argentina. Remember, it's all in the news for us to see. For those of us that have the eyes to see, this might be the time. Maybe you should just look for some silver coins. And why coins? Is because that's going to be that's your actual money. You'll have to get intelligent on how that works, and what you have and what you don't, and the conversions and all that. Yeah, it's a little bit more of a pain, but you might not suffer. You will not be suffering the losses that may be coming on us here. Another way that they're hacking our life and stealing money is ransomware. Experts cracked nasty ransomware that took crypto extortion to new heights. Although I think this may have been adjusted, I wanted you to know about it as we move into the fingerprints as currency story last week with Japan going to experiment. Remember, they said this is a digital technology, a digital future, your digital money. And then and I don't know if you picked up on this, and I didn't say it, I just wanted to just kind of let it rest a week. Your fingerprints was a kind of a clue here. You know those you have digits. That's what your finger, there's another name for your fingers, or digits. So this is what they've been kind of telling us as well. The digital technology is you having to put your fingers somewhere in order to get along in the world in the system that they are bringing upon you. Now remember, we were told back in the 90s that there's going to be a dual monetary system set up, those of all y'all in the United States inside the borders, and then there's going to be the global thing, and that you're not going to have access to it. So there's going to be another buffer built in, and that may be what causes them to be able to adjust this a lot better, to make it not so much for the United States people, because they may not tolerate it quite as much as a lot of other people that came up from nothing may. They don't want to rile the natives. So this is the underlying thing. That's what I always caution our response, why you're not going to see the revolution broadcast, because you're never going to be you're not going to be even in the concept of the idea of causing an uproar and doing something in the idea of a revolution. You're just going to sit there and let that wheel go right around, and no one's going to see it. No one's going to see it, so no one's going to respond. There's no need to televise it because there's nothing actually going on. But experts cracked nasty ransomware, took crypto extortion to new heights. I just wanted to show you that your digital, where you put your fingers to get your currency, is hackable. It's going to take people that are going to be counter to that, and if you're not one of those people, you're at all their mercy. A nasty piece of ransomware that took crypto extortion to new heights contains a fatal weakness that allows the victims to decrypt their data without paying the hefty ransom. So I got a link for you in case you want to see how that works, or get your information. So in case it happens to you, a lot of this is don't click on unknown files, don't click on these extendable things, don't click on documents that you don't know. That's a lot of this. But at any rate, they figured out how to break this ransomware problem. But understand that the people that made it, it's understood, this ransomware, if I remember this story, this is a ransomware that was pretty sophisticated, so the people that made it may have enough knowledge to get around the crack of the crack. So, boy, a lot of drugs in that conversation. I hope I don't get swat on me here. But here we are, we're cracking the hack, and then they're going to be doing more. But this is all speaking to your digital lifestyle and the currency in your fingertips that's going to put your life into the control of everybody that has the knowledge of the technology. And this is, again, when you go from the financial bill, buck, Federal Reserve note, fiat debt-based system. Remember, I told you a long time ago, read right from the Federal Reserve website, that they have to take the coins that are in use and put them as an asset, not an actual debt instrument. They're an asset that they can't claim in the debt side. That's what they have to account for. So they're telling us what the deal is, and they're giving you your choice, and their attitude is, well, shame on you. We told you, shame on you for maintaining your holdings. All I see, there's like it was a few times before, and it didn't happen before, but this one's another one. Doesn't have the global threat now that China poses on it. Remember, Saudi Arabia was going to put out $1 trillion worth of its treasuries. China's holding something like $3 trillion. And so if it decides to kind of move the same way, and you see the saber rattling that we hear the stories that there's nuclear subs off the coast of the United States, and Russia's doing more of their flyovers. You think those countries don't understand what's going on? You think they're not telegraphing that we don't care how big you are, you're not going to do and threaten us with your nuclear power and all your forces. We're not going to let you just get away with doing that. And we have some financial, monetary, and fiscal power now. Thank you very much for all the business you've done with us. And the only thing that happens if the United States retaliates is chaos. So that is the anarchy I keep telling you living, but even worse. It gets worse. And we're stuck in the vice in the middle of it. So if you're not in it, if you got holding none of it, if your stuff isn't in the state, folks, they can't come and take it. Pretty simple. They can thieve it from you like any other thief, but they can't take it even through their legalistic sense, their legalisms. Another threat to us is, along with this ransomware, people hacking your system, because you click on it. Things you click on and use may not understand that you are able to give information about yourself, which then leads to more information. As I tell you to go do, you take the blogcaster, you can go off on, I tell you, one sentence to me may be 2 or 3 hours of research that becomes, in this, like last week, fruitful, very fruitful in my mind. That you have to take the information and go with something to go use it, and we're turning it right around, and we're starting to apply it already. It's just a natural progression. And it's not just me. I hand it off to certain people that I think can deal with it, or in the subject matter that are appreciative of it, and they're going to do their magic. Everyone adds their own value added to this. It's all private economy that way, and all it is not changing the system, but making it work the way it's supposed to. Once we get it working the way it's supposed to, then we'll look for those other things that didn't work so good. But there's a way to get it to working correctly, and a lot of that is getting people in those offices. Don't try to ignore the system. occupy the system, if I can say it that way, although I cringe, but even we're using the word occupy. But that's what's happening to us. We're in occupied territory. We're going to reoccupy our land. It's really throwing them out, folks. How do you displace them if you're not in the place? The international law requires we displace the criminality against the occupier. How is not engaging going to be an answer? I just don't see it. And I'm not talking from my opinion. This is what history we have come to as a peoples of the world. This is how we respond to each other. This is what we do. This is not some philosophical idea. In a way, I wish it were, because I could just not even engage it, like so much chatter I see. But there's a reality in the world. I find it amazing how many people want to deny the reality of the world. They want to deny the foundation of where we are. They even deny the foundation in their constructions of examples of how to deny and support an evasion of these things. It's phenomenal. I listen to stuff. I can't even listen to it much anymore. Because I know when you go down those paths, I'm now getting very good, I think. I'm having to agree to myself that I have an interesting insight that allows me to cut right through lots of things, not everything, but lots of things that talk in these subject matters. I can hear it within a few words. And I know it irritates some people to no end that I talk with. They can't handle me that way. I have to apologize a bit. It's beyond me. The truth comes out, the foundation comes out, because I don't see why engaging in it for any amount of time is valuable. We have to move on to the actual foundation that's really working and work from there. And the foundation they're building for us is a digital foundation, and none of us actually have control of any of it. And that's why weight and measure was important. Can you weight and measure an electron? Well, I guess science has kind of told us, but you know what science is. It's our guessing by golly of what we think the world's about. But weight and measure based on our standards that we can all agree tangibly in our hands, that's why the weight and measure of the money was important. The fix is not in on that, folks. And you see the disparate number. You're going to pay $1,200, what is it? 12 to 1 now, I think it is, for the silver value in money. Your money's been stolen even before you got here. The value now, even where it came down, is starting to rise up. I'm astonished at how little premium you're going to pay on top. How much, because you have to buy by the ounce and it's on each ounce, how much money's going into somebody's pocket just to hand you the silver coins. And then you get the return back in sales back. It doesn't come back. That's why you have to take it as best as you can as when it hits the lows, and then use it. Don't resell it back. Use it to make it a monetary thing, a weight and measure. Get the morals back in your life. That's really what that stands for. It's not puff and smoke. It's not digits. It's not electrons. It's not 1,872 electrons to a proton weight. It's not a carbon tax. Ethereal nonsense, all through a digital nonsense that people can hack and people can interfere with, and you hope the white knights are there to help you, because you're literally helpless to it. And then we go and we use the tools that are out there, and people what do I know? I just behind the woodshed. I just do my clicks. I just do my research. I'm focused on getting what I need. I've got my blinders on outside of all that as well. Report exposes flaws in link shorteners that reveal sensitive info about users and track their offline movements. Who'd have thunk of all this stuff? But here it is. You can be tracked. Why is that important? Because you're going to be living in this digital life, or as much of your life that's digital and financed, and filed that way, is hackable and changeable, usable. A lot of times by people, if they focus on you in the government or criminals, I just repeated myself, to use against you. Just the clicking of what you do, where you go, what you say is findable through these shorteners. They do mention that a couple of these has been plugged by the companies that are really allowing it, but not so much, and it proves it can be done. It seems every tool that's allowed to us in digital form has some vulnerability. And I want you to be aware of it. I don't look at this, your whole life is hackable, and they've done it with your Federal Reserve notes. It's a hackable system. The fix was in, folks. This is not a joke. This is all you work for in your life, and you tried to make a future for you and your little ones, and all that, and your lifestyle you work for as a group of people. It's been infiltrated at every point, and we've been crickets. And that's why it continues. So, they can follow you even by what you do offline by these link shorteners and following through and being diligent about doing inspections of these things that go on and on and on in digital form. I don't even know, like I said, I don't want to read on and on, read these stories. Just get the link. The blogcaster is there. Get the link. Read more about it. Find out how vulnerable you are. I would say you really, and this has been a consistent theme, I'm not the only one that puts it out there, you have to find an alternative reality, and that's going to be reality, not the virtual one that they tell you think you're in and made to be in and forcing you into. You have to extricate yourself into the tangible world. And then when you get in the tangible world, reanalyze it, because you don't have a clue about it. I know that. For someone I partly admire a lot of his work, Corbett. But to come off with a question about your access and who's going to do the roads completely negates the history of tells us who's going to do the roads. It's already in your road law who's going to do the roads. And there's a process about who's going to do the roads in case someone wants to take that on. And there's a process behind underneath that as well, and who has to say. And it is local to you. It's not some far-off federal agency. It's actually in our hands where we live. But we have all the people that are out there and doing good work at one level, but missing the very foundations, the knowledge of which would remove the question and we'd be on to something else. Hopefully more important. And this is the thing that kind of irritates me a little bit. A lot of what I hear being talked about is not a question when it relates itself to the law based in land and its use and its function and why. Everyone misses the why behind all this. And that is supposed to be protected. That it's not is what you're railing against, that you're not going to change by just railing against it, ignoring it, not looking at it. Because to walk away from that, you're walking away from the property in yourself that they're controlling. I guess that's the bottom line to this. If you non-monetary bottom line, it's your bottom. That's what's online, and they've got it in a vice. And if you say nothing about that, they win. They win by how they treat you. So back to the digital, the digital vulnerabilities in our digital world, our fingerprint world, where that's going to be our currency. And you know it's going to go beyond that. That's just a notice to us. Uninstall QuickTime for Windows. Apple will not patch its security bugs. And all of y'all that have QuickTime, just uninstall it. Apple's not going to do this no more. More vulnerabilities. I turned that stuff off a long time ago. So we're vulnerable to the digital world at every turn. This is not about, I'm not doing something wrong. This is about you can be doing everything right, and the things you use the benefits of the internet for that make your life the more simple that it can be used, the good side of it, are going to be, can be, I can't say gonna, it can be exploited, and to a very high level and to a very high probability, whether they get you to help out or not. Another thing, we talk about Apple and doing their faux response to the FBI and the San Bernardino. I understand the San Bernardino phone had nothing on it, folks. Nada. They got nothing on that phone. All this noise. Well, it comes out, the Canadian police intercepted 1 million messages using BlackBerry's master key encryption key report says. You get this, those of you in Canuckistan, up and using Blackberries. I don't know many people who use these. I understand they were a big deal in their day. I understand that I guess they still have some function, but there was a master encryption key that was handed over to Canadian authorities. Did you know that? This is what's happening in all this stuff. So it's not what you can do that's all lawful and all. It's not that you're not doing anything unlawful. It's that you're vulnerable. All these systems, these legalized things, are vulnerabilities to you. When they gave you the FRN, the Federal Reserve Note, when they gave you that buck, when they gave you that evidence of debt, the evidence of that definition of which is in the word note. Just go read the word what a note is. It's an evidence of debt. So when you hand someone a debt, an evidence of debt, you can't be said to be paying anything. You use that legalized tender. and you are subject to its fix. Just like we were talking about in one of the chats, heroin came up as an addictive drug. And I was wondering about heroin Catwoman, came to my mind, to see where my mind goes. I don't even understand some of this stuff, I guess. But we can be susceptible and put ourselves there, or we can withdraw. And that's withdrawing from that is the occupation of that imposition. Not so with the territorial imposition where you live. That you have to oust the evildoer. You know, I haven't changed that statement forever. I mean, it's wherever it is, you have to arrest crime wherever you find it. And if you don't, you become an accessory to it in some part. And yes, we've allowed quite a bit of crime. We're surrounded, infiltrated and surrounded. But that doesn't negate our need, really a necessity beyond all necessity, to arrest it as best as we can get it to work. It's not going to be easy. I've told you we're in the mix of it right now. I tell you, the law enforcement officer, sheriff of the county that we're filing paper into, he's as much of a criminal as them all, and so he's coming up on the chopping block as well in a public record. So what do? We just keep making that public record. And what are we doing when we do that? Well, we start offsetting the excuses the government uses in order to beat down the rest of the people, whether that be new taxation or new fees or new things, that the advantages they want to take. We start to put the kibosh on all that. Because when you don't, they do. And so we have the Canadian police already have an encryption key from the BlackBerry, and then here in all of this nonsense with the I think it was following on the heels of this Panama Papers as well, and it happened before that as well. That encryption, you see this encryption thing going on in the news. Wherever there was a terrorist act, you see there was encryption involved, and then you see now that that big Apple, facade, charade, has nothing on that phone, but they still press. They don't want encryption. They don't want you to have your little tax haven, your little digital data haven. They want to outlaw it. So now a new bill comes to outlaw encryption. They are in power and are simply liars. We will elect such people as those in power are simply liars. Why we elect such people is beyond me. We cannot afford career politicians because they always create a divide between themselves and the people. No republic has ever resisted converting into an oligarchy. Folks, you can be one too. I mean, you just got to follow the legal that they all do, and you become, at least look like one. No republic has ever resisted converting into an oligarchy. It just doesn't work. Well, there's not a resistance, folks. It's keeping. See, this is the wrong. I read this thing, these stories that people write. It just drives me nuts. You have to keep something. It's not resisting something. If you've gone to resistance, you screwed up a long time ago. But here it is. They got the bill now. They're going to try and outlaw encryption. Somehow this seems like a bit of an oxymoron, and I can't quite put my finger on it to intelligently discuss it. But it flashed in my mind, and I didn't fix on it too much. Got so much to think about. They're trying to outlaw this encryption, but they gave a key to the Canuckistinians. At least they're overpressors, the oppressors. So what's this deal on this encryption? But here it is. They want to get rid of the encryption. And then I'm wondering, well, how are they going to... There was some thought about the encryption that the government needs has to go away. And so does your secure HTTPS goes away. And so what? Again, it's the wrong response for this rabid control that issues out of these people that just want, these psychopaths that just want control. The fruit of this whole dialogue is to try and get to outlaw encryption, and the bill is here. So you can be quiet about that, or else you're going to find out that you're going to have a whole lot more trouble in the future when your digits and your things can't be encrypted. Oh, they'll make an exception. Sure they will. Only to advance the system, to force you to do what they need to do and have no protections against it. And it's getting so bad. I mean, even the system, like what I was saying, we're going to use the sustainable development. Now, just in one instance, let me clarify that use the sustainable development through a treaty to club the rest of these interlopers and domestic usurpers and trespassers and terrorists. But inside we do that because we can show that even those domestic terrorists, like the governors of the state who are imposing this agenda, they don't even follow their own sustainable development constraints. These are such international criminals, they don't even follow the sustainable development. So we're dealing with a whole spectrum of criminality that's kind of beyond, I think, in lots of people's comprehension, that even what's going on inside the system is not understood so well. We're starting to see the fracture, the porcelain's cracking. They don't have the communication that they thought they had. The communication that they did have was what I used to ferret out what was going on, and that's breaking down even. That the controller system has things that can be breached. And this is actually what happens is we might be an advantage, and I guess it could be abused, but what ends up happening is it's not good for us because of the condition. That becomes dangerous to you because they start responding and acting on things without full knowledge of what's actually going on. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand does. You're going to get hurt some more. You're the one in the middle of this because you haven't stepped out of it. Not even police were told about this active shooter drill, was a report so secret that it's your own. It's for your safety. They're showing that they don't even want to talk about some of this stuff because it's now the necessity of this what do you call national security. No, not even the government talks to itself over these things. So secure for your safety that they don't even tell anybody. It isn't the first time that military, SWAT teams, FBI, police, and Homeland Security officials have conducted large-scale emergency exercises inside cities and frightened the locals. Joint Task Force mock disasters, raids, and response teams have routinely taken over local areas in order to prepare for martial law and a thorough police state, and people are often riled by the sounds of explosions, gunshots, helicopters, and teams of men in black uniforms. Interjection, behind the woodshed, we already understand it is martial law. That's why you're seeing what this is. The fact of their existence tells you that. Not my opinion. Article 1, Libre Code, the General Order 100. You can read it on the internet. I use avalon.com to see the Libre Code. It's pretty well laid out, easy to read. Just Article 1 tells you when you seize them, that's it. They don't have to tell anything. But this time, even the local police weren't told about the drill taking place, even though it was happening within their own department. So I'll just stop there and go on and on and talk about this. So when you have a system that you're working with someone who doesn't even know, it's like secrets inside your own system, and you're taking action that could be harming people or talk about Keystone Cops. But you're in the middle of that is the problem. So it's getting to the point that the feds are not talking to anybody as they move out these things, and not even the police that are supposed to be working with them, that they're in their offices, telling you they're in their offices locally. I guess for me, I see a little different story going on here. Whatever's written by people and what their impression might be, the reporting of this event gives us more details. And the other thing about this encryption, this is, I guess, what got me about the interesting thing about moving to outlaw encryption, was we talked a long time ago, and the evidence was sitting there that all this discussion about the NSA coming in to get information, asking permission, that we got this idea. I think I fully got this idea when I found out that the Tor, the Onion router circuit, is just a bunch of routers that are sit out there that anybody can open up, and even an NSA. That it occurred to me that's how they would just hack the system. The system's already been hacked. As I was telling you before, the military, this internet is really established under a military consequence and need, and now it's expanded into you get to use it like the highways. The highways are military highways, not for you. And as soon as you see something that they need, you're going to find out how fast you have a right to use them when they're going to coexist there. They'll be nice for a while, but those highways, that's why they expand them to fit the bigger tanks. That's why you see all this highway improvement on major Eisenhower highways. Those are military highways out of 1956. They're not used. Same way with the internet. Internet's a military highway they allow you to use. That it occurred to me a long time ago. I don't know even what the question is, but here it is. Maybe the NSA has already broken every security system, not by hacking computers, but by hacking the entire industry. So someone's looking at this and saying, "Oh, this looks like it's more of a reality," and I have to agree. And that's why the encryption bill is just fluff in our face. Because if this thing has really been hacked before us, as we kind of conjecture that it might be, we didn't make the thing. We didn't make this contraption. We just come along for the ride. I told you a long time ago that this is a public venue. You can't make it private. And I've tried. I actually put that in those you look in the source code and you type in private, and I had to laugh. It was actually kind of funny. I watched the computer. When I went to save that file, I watched the computer change what I wrote as private, make a new line, put the line I put down farther down the body, farther down the meta tags, and put in its place the word public document. I realized right there someone has been there before me to know someone would try to do that, to make the subroutine that when I put the word private document in the source code as I programmed the web page, that someone had to know I was going to be there to do that, and they had to have a source code routine handler that would change that line. Didn't eliminate the line, but they made sure the top line said public document. So I went to a little bit of hacking I do, comes natural, and I hacked out that ability for them to do that. And so I have a couple of documents that actually do say private document as the source code on the top line. But you have to understand there's an intelligence before you that has worked all this out. Nothing on the internet is actually private. So nothing should have been understood, as you hear the court cases say, anything out in the public has no expectation of privacy, should have told you something. That this story, I think, is right on the point. What if the NSA has already broken the entire security by it is the system? I don't think that anybody with a reasonable mind would argue with any of this. They'd say, yeah, okay, let's move on. Let's move on. Be aware, your digital life is the silent weapons for quiet wars, folks. I keep that at the bottom of my blogcasters for a reason. We're being told on how we're being done. It's not even hard to figure out, and that's telling us that's our call to action. It's not our call to give up or make excuses. I guess that's the thing that's kind of irritating me. I'm noticing I see so many people would just make a reason why not to move in the right direction. I don't know why that is, but I just make the observation, and I guess I balance it against what I see, what I'm doing. For as slow as molasses as it seems to go, does go. Things are changing, and that's all dependent on who's in the seat of decision and where we have those. That seems to be a big deal. How we communicate to people to bring them over to if there's a side to be, our side, and which really is only cemented, if I can put this in this term, it's made concrete in their mind by seeing the black and white. Backing everything we say up is absolutely foundationally supported. No opinion. I mean, literally zero. I may talk to you here, so I may have an opinion, but I don't talk about it too much. Actually, it's getting to the point the world's going so fast, I don't know if I can have an opinion. I have a few, but that's not what is important for us either. What is the black and white that's been adulterated, or the black and white that's making the adulteration for our existence, is what's going on. For me, in my life now, it's affecting me now, is why I act, and I know that if I do what I do, I can see, at least in my mind's eye, I can see that what I do for me will help people in the future. So I'm just not this, I guess the word's altruistic guy. There's reasons why I'm doing this for me. I can't do things that the law says I should be, which tells me I live in an occupied territory, the occupiers of which are committing war crimes. And they haven't been called out. There, I said it. And when you do the research, you're going to see that. We're going to get back to the international law. You'll see what's going on in the United States is literally a war crime. A bunch of them. Not just the felonies, I tell you, not just the treason. It's so wrong, folks. It violates even the senses of people that don't have the type of system that the United States of America created to actually keep us protected. It violates even the senses of the banana republics you know about, and the lesser so. That's how wrong this is, and I hear crickets, is my astonishment to why I've gone to crickets. I just keep going to keep finding and make it more ridiculous on how bad this really is, and I still hear the crickets. That's the thing that gets me. And worse, I see people going the wrong direction. Good people. Do I know so? I mean, am I a know-it-all? Well, no, I just know that in those areas they're going the wrong direction. Why? Because I went in them or started down that trail, found the error of my ways, and said, wait a minute, oh, wait, that's not a good thing. I have to rethink this. We got a new path to take. Or watch just ahead of me, the guy get taken down. Maybe I don't want to step over there. Maybe that's not the direction I want to go. And I was real keen to all that before. That's why I think I have an authority, a real power, a foundation to say what I say. Not here to tell y'all anything more than you can take my experiences to your advantage, or you can disregard them at your detriment. And we'll hear each other, eventually be yakking and talking about how it all didn't work, and the woe is us, and the cost of bread, and whatever. Oh, this car I was driving me someplace, took me to the cops. Oh, why did that do that? I should have never gotten that car. Oh, please. We're doing it to ourselves. We went through tax time. I didn't even talk about it. Did any of you file a paper and said, hey, I noticed there was this thing called a voluntary tax? Everybody on the internet doesn't understand what that means, but I'm not going to go into it. But did you even send a letter to say, I noticed right here in this chapter 26, it says I was supposed to have a meeting that you were supposed to call when my activity was taxable. I seem to have missed the memo. Can you send a copy of that memo? I don't know of many people that have even talked. I've mentioned this over and over again. I do it every time we come and talk about people getting, taxes, theft. Well, it's not theft. You agreed to it. It's right in the law you agreed to it. You agreed to it by not challenging the fact of the imposition, which required due process. That due process was that meeting. It's right in the code. So did you even send them a letter back and say, hey, before I file these, and give me an extension of time because you were giving me the impression that I was supposed to file, but I realized this little rule right here in chapter 26 says that you were supposed to find my activity liable. Can you show me that meeting? Okay. And then until then, I don't have much to do I? Because in that meeting, the statutes tell you what's supposed to happen, and if none of that's happened, then you have nothing that you've been ordered to do and have no obligation, do you? No, you've accepted the obligation to pay taxes. It's not theft, it's your ignorance. And so, to me, I see things differently, I know. And I'm not asking anybody to get in trouble. A letter's not getting you in trouble. What did I say? You asked for an extension under the prior obligation you thought you had, and then challenge the obligation altogether in the letter, and they can't go anywhere until they've resolved it. At least you've started this record that then makes the facts of the evidence of what you're relying on, your reliance defense, the real one. And if you're really smart, you're going to put your money in an escrow account to say, I didn't want to really pay that, but I'm going to put it there just so you know I don't intend not to pay, just in case you can show me that letter that said we had the meeting and you ordered me to do 5 things. I think it's 5 things. So, I have a whole different view on this. Some people may or may not want to see it. I don't know about that. I just know when I've handled things this way now, going to the law, finding the requirements, the same thing happens in the mining law, 3809 violation of noncompliance, 3715 occupancy violation for noncompliance, with filing a notice of intent and a plan of operations. We send back your 3809s aren't applicable. Pretty quick answer, folks. I don't get involved anymore. Does that mean they go away? Well, sometimes, but sometimes not, and so you have to take it a little bit further. The answers to our subjection is our consent to it. So enough on that law, taxation. Yes, taxation is theft at some level, you know. I mean, there's that sentiment. But in actual practice, no, it's your consent. It's not theft. It's your consent is what taxation is. It's us doing it wrong, us being induced to do it wrong. And then I read this article, and I'm thinking, when I first read it, I go, how can you arrest the elderly? They can't be arrested. And by the time I reach the end of the article, I'm saying, throw away the key. NDAA these people. So I'm not free of big swings, without having information or adjusting my mind as I hear more information. Arrests made as hundreds of elderly Americans protest the second democracy spring sit-in. Democracy spring. See, folks, they want to have an American spring. They want to do the same thing here that they did back in the Middle East. They want you divided. They want you divided on really dumb things, too. And I got behind, well, how can you arrest the elderly for standing on the steps? I mean, please. But then you read what the people, the organizers behind this do. Democracy spring, it's like Occupy, it's all this nonsense stuff. It comes from the false condition. If all those elderly were properly active, they wouldn't have to be a democracy spring. All them old elder spring chickens. When I'm saying elderly, folks, by definition, that's about 46 years old for all y'all think you're waiting for the 90s. No, it's been elder defines it at 56. The new world, the little Soylent Green room is going to be for you at age 50 come sometime in the future. But let's listen to the words of the organizers of this elder spring arrest fiasco and see if you don't come to the point where you're saying, yeah, maybe we should just keep those people indefinitely detained. They're a threat. They're completely ignorant is the main thing, so they're not culpable here to this point. But my point is when you see what the ultimate goal is, this is the thing we need to arrest. It's not the elderlies on the step, but the organizers that are getting people all focused out of wrong things, and then the ignorance in the elderly to allow themselves to be put in this place. That said, there's this virus in the world that puts this into people that may have come from these vaccines that makes people think that this is the right thing to do. The statement, as elders, they're speaking for, this organization's speaking for the elders. As elders, I guess I have to also say, remember, you'll find as UN connected, and this is the words of utilizing the stalking horse of the elder or the indigenous, right, as well. So, as elders, we have a moral imperative to care for and speak for future generations. The Democracy Spring website reads, we aim to use our wisdom and life experience to guide our actions and stand together to create our legacy and reclaim our democracy. Every voice is needed to speak up and say what we know is true, that a thriving and just democracy is the path towards a sustainable world for all children, for all life. By the time I got done reading that part, I'm saying, NDAA, where are you? These people need to be put in indefinite detention. Do I need to go through and explain that statement to y'all? I'm not sure that I do, but let me just touch a couple things. First of all, we're not in a democracy, right? I keep telling you that. That's what they're imposing. That's mob rule. Military knows they have the military has defined it as mob rule. That's democracy. They want a path, the path that's been formed for you towards a sustainable world. That's future ongoing debt by the migration Agenda 2030. I won't go through it all again. For all life is the biodiversity treaty not ratified. Includes all life, not just yours, but yours in balance with everything else that's living out there. That voice that they're talking about is the only one that they speak that these so-called elders are representing in your perception, which a website claims. So, I went from, wow, how do you do that to elders just protesting? Where's your First Amendment? To finding out that what they're protesting is your way of life, and what they're imposing is global dominance onto a select few, and putting your life into the moral obligation that you have, that the Vatican puts on you, the debt obligation that A2030 speaks to, and the fact that they will destroy your life and cause migrations across every land without borders to do so. So what's sustainable is their system, not you. Anyway, again, I read these things a little different. Do I want the elders, these folks that are older, to be put in jail? Absolutely not. But I want you to understand there's a way to read the notice to us on what's actually happening in the agenda they're promoting. That is absolutely needs to be condemned outright. I would take all these people and I would say, listen, you got to understand something. Hopefully I could communicate what that is. And I said, now this is what you actually need to focus on. It's really the 180-degree view out of what we were just reading from their website. And we've seen this over and over and over again. It's the words you read to identify them. These people that promote, and this thing that they promote that needs to be thrown out. That has to be physically thrown off. That's our obligation in the world, the reality of the world, no philosophical ideas, no ideas of evasion. What the physical thing, the reality that has to happen, you have to throw this out. It's a physical thing. They're mentally doing it to your mind so that you don't respond to it. They got me. Oh, elders, how do you beat these elders up and arrest them? But in fact, they're actually promoting a crime. This is a war crime, as I now see the international side of this. And I've had to do an analysis, and I say that out of some officialness, because we just made it an official statement through the Jefferson Mining District on how these very things are war crimes. And where did I go? I went to the things I've been telling you about. I haven't really actually found new stuff as far as the base underlying foundation of how we approach this, to look at the analysis for it. All the documents that I've been ever talking about, we're kind of stuck in them. They're foundational. I don't need to go very far to find within their own words for hundreds of years the truth that I hear lots of people in their philosophical ideas and want to throw out. Now the problem is that, well, I guess it just flashed in my mind. I was in discussion with somebody, always looking for ways to communicate to people, even those that don't like me for some reason, and I'm trying to figure that out. I'm not, and I'm kind of reclusive a bit as well. But it occurred to me in discussing with a good friend of mine something about somebody, a powerhouse in their own right, but they don't view me with too much favor. But in the discussion, I'm trying to analyze, well, how do we get in his favor? How do we make it so that he'll see what he needs to see, so he can do much better than what he's doing? He can actually do the thing he thinks he's doing, not what he talks about doing. And it occurred to me that he was right. This guy who says I don't communicate very well. I had to agree I'm into the conversation, just so maybe you see a distinction here about what I do and why some people may not be able to hear it. And Solomon from Brasilistan just pops up in my mind telling me this very same thing in a different way. That I cannot communicate to those whose purpose is to be. Their intention is to be something. The people I communicate with are the ones that actually intend to do something and do it. So I had to agree in the analysis. I'm trying to work this out. The people that don't like me, or the people that I don't communicate to, or the people that don't appreciate maybe what I have to offer, are those I can identify readily want to be something, but not necessarily want to do anything. And so if you can understand without any insult to anybody who wants to be, you can be that all you want. But the rule of the law in the world over eons of mind of man says that we have something to always do. Keeping is a doing. Hoping is not. But keeping. Resisting is a do, but it's in the wrong way, where you can see there was laws to require that you didn't have to anymore. where that was a fact at one short time and then it changed to where you had to resist again, that's an adulteration that you have to fight, not the system that's sitting there that's been adulterated, but those that did the adulteration. That I don't speak to those that want to be something. That's like a title. You might want to be the greatest thing in the world. That's fine. But right now, for me, I see things have to be done. So if you are someone that needs to be something, I won't communicate to you. And maybe that's why I don't have the listenership that wants to do something. They want to be something. They want to be known for what they say, or be known for this whatever, by a title, by an action, by a string of knowledge they think they've got, or whatever. But they don't want to apply it into doing what the thing is that needs to be done. And I say that advisedly. I don't know all that needs to be done. That's why I leave it all up to y'all. There's enough of us to go everywhere that needs to be done. There's a skill set in each one of us that can contribute to its part to something else on any number of issues of needing to be done. And maybe much more and better than I would ever conceive. So that's the bottom line. I'm going to say it one more time. I don't speak, I do not communicate. I have to agree with this. I do not communicate with those that want to be. I do not communicate with those that want to be a thing. I communicate to those that want to do a thing. And I want to repeat that, because in my mind that's critical. In the law, it's critical. You look at anybody, they can be whatever they want, but if they're not doing what they need to do, it's fruitless. So the deed, indeed, folks, what is our Libra Code? Acknowledging we live in a world of war perpetual. What does the Libra Code say? The doing is what you acknowledge. That's the actual notice and fact. Not the being, not the claim of a being. Oh, I can be this and be that. No. So, enough there. This is the importance of it. I don't believe I have a lock on how to do, but I do have a certain insight on that we have been doing and doing fairly well, notwithstanding the number, again, it's like molasses, it seems, but the profoundness of what's going on is something, the quality of what's altering is really mind-blowing at some level. What we actually have to speak to is mind-blowing when we see what's actually reverting to what it needed to be. And I really can't think, maybe some of you can be advanced women on this, to think, where are we going to go? What do we need to do once we get this thing fixed? But to me, I really can't think of the next step until I see the machine working the way it was supposed to work, to then work on maybe its shortcomings. That's why I'm not really so certain anymore that, just dissing on government generally is an answer, but that looking and seeing why we came to government, what already existed there that was the good parts, finding out who infected the machine or didn't do the maintenance on the. Well, he didn't do the maintenance. We didn't do the maintenance, but who the wrong parts got ordered or something and got put in the machine, causing it to not work and run the way it was supposed to work and run. That's on us. So once we fix that, and we get back to understanding what the machine was really meant to do, then we can look and see how we can design it better. Or we can see, well, I think that's the way to go. I don't know why you'd want to invent a whole new thing when you divorce all of man's history of mind. If you divorce the mind of man, you just brought yourself back into a time immemorial before the mind. And we learn nothing. It's kind of like coming back and being born again with no concept, at least outwardly, that what we've been done about. We're just starting to come back into toddler back in the world. I hope none of you wish that onto yourself and your progeny. So this world being formed for you is there, and it's formed for you, and you can accept it or not, or you can find out why it's wrong and not do anything around it. You can be about it, and then you won't hear nothing from me. I will not communicate to that. I really don't. The truth of that was just so apparent when it just struck me. I don't talk to people that want to be. The people we were talking about just want to be something. I be the chairman. I be the important guy. I be the guy that called the meeting. I be this important point. Okay, well, what have you done with that important point? Now that was where the big chasm appeared. Now, what have you done for me lately, kind of thing. Now, what have you done? I don't mean chatting. I mean substantively to what is the problem, the ailment that we have, the wrong that needs to be righted. The world that they made for us that isn't the world that really ought to be and was promised. It's a shortcoming. It's mediocrity in its most the most simple point, but it's a war crime at the other end. Why do we disrespect ourselves to allow these literal folks? When you start, like I said, I can't go into quite yet. I just tell you that the analysis is done. What's going on to us is way so far beyond treason. It's why it's treason. It's a war crime what's happening against us. It doesn't look like it on the inside, but that's exactly what it is. And so we can remain silent to the crime against us. We're just being disrespectful to ourselves and those around us. So it's going to take a doing spirit and a physical doing of something. Because the world that they want to set up for you is a fallen world. There's people without insight. It's people without a nature of empathy, caring, or even a basic knowledge of... see, they didn't even take what we have and build from it. They are wholesale washing it away because they think this international imposition's a better one, that we came from is better going back. They say it's modernizing. They say it's now postmodern, but we're actually being driven back into the dark ages. And we're allowing that. That war isn't been relieved from us. That the future, going into the future that they want, is not even sustainable. It's not even within the context of their own provisions. As I was pointing out, we can now see the people that are imposing sustainable development are even outside the international constraints for sustainable development, making them truly, well, sustainable development's a war crime as well, but I mean truly beyond war crime. Where do you go? I started to think, where do we go? Do we have a galactic federation we go to now? We're going international now. Where the next place is going off the planet. Where's SETI when you need it, folks? This criminal syndicate is global. It's no question. It commits war crimes. This is how high the level is that we're being crickets to, that just astonishes me. But if you want to see your future of how this works and the legal entities, and the bottom line is the bottom line, and how the government tries to do for you without any knowledge but to put the agenda to you, United Health makes good on threat to pull out of Obama scare. We talked about this a few months ago, that somebody who's an insider on a monopoly couldn't even do this issue. The medical security that they're imposing upon you isn't even doable for the criminals inside the syndicate. That United Health, a mutual insurance provider, has to back out. The Affordable Care Act suffered another jolt, the Frankenstein jolt, I guess. Last week with the news, the United Health Group, the largest health insurer, was making good on its threat to pull out of Obama scare, beginning with its operation in Georgia and Arkansas. Then they go off and talk about last November and stuff. I don't remember. I suppose that was when we first mentioned it, when it first came to my attention that there was problems. This was all predicted to be the problems. Here it is coming, folks. It's coming pretty quick. Good. And it's a good thing. But there's no discussion around this. It's all coming at the same time in April. It's also out of the fiscal times. I wonder what the connections here is. This is now, they're not going to be able to send the fraud of this healthcare in the system and use all that as GDP. Remember, all this cost goes to the GDP. Those of you who are looking at getting information out, we all talk about, we're not going to get justice in the world and this and that, and follow remember Benghazi, and remember how all this other stuff goes, and who's on the hook, and the State Department, and Hillary Clinton, and the system of the Federal Bureau of Investigations not being such the white knight we're all told that it was. And I told you about our private experience of making a complaint to show cause, and FBI turned on us. So we're already of the knowledge that it's going to the highest levels. FBI is the DOJ. DOJ is in the executive branches. That's the unqualified one, the Obama. But a while back, we're talking about if Hillary Clinton is going to be outed, that the odds are everyone says it's not going to happen. Well, we have the evidence of it. Justice is a question because unqualified one says, I guarantee President Obama said no political influence investigating Hillary's Clinton's classified email scandal. Well, if it's a scandal, folks, there's something there already, but he's promising no political influence. He then added the national security wasn't endangered. In other words, innocent if proven guilty. In other words, there's not going to be any actual investigation in the news. So if you think that there's going to be this scandal come out, the system is set up to protect their own. That identifies as the deed of an occupying force within the framework of a government that may have had some validity, and in some parts I can find very, very good validity. There's all coming out at this time in this report. They talk about Russia and China, and they give all this story about how this is going to work. The bottom line of all this is that the president, so-called, with his minions, is already making the statements that appear to make it look like they're doing something objective. In fact, there is going to be no scrutiny. No scrutiny is, under Obamacare, insurers are losing money on a product people must buy. They're back to the Obamacare issue. Remember, Clinton was a cradle to grave. She's tied in that way. None of that's going to be scrutinized. See, I don't know what's in these emails. I don't know what the broad spectrum coverage is all about, but she's been involved in all of this stuff. People are losing money inside a monopoly that was set up by the government. How bad these ideas are. It's really astonishing to hear the silence. I was really kind of perplexed. A lot of people agreed with this change and everybody losing their health care and having to now see it's costing more. And we hear nothing. It's like people are just beat down into just accepting what they're gave. Forget the republic if you can keep it. We lost that a long time ago. No, again, I don't think we did. It's always there for the people to grab up, and I guess that's the example I want to be. I don't know. I guess that's an example I want to leave or continue. We can't accept this mediocreness, even in the people that are in the offices, and you know that they're not really controlling a whole lot. It's the dynamic of the corruption inside that we are not doing enough to take out. And I'm finding out we can do it locally. And so I see the example of how that works. It is slow, but that's only because there's only a few of us working on it. As I ask, who knows if it might be coming, I don't know. If I had an army of people, as little as maybe 100, and we focused on some of this stuff, I don't see how we wouldn't change things a whole lot faster. There'd be no way for a focused attack doing proper things and more proper things to be able to that could be resisted by anybody that was in a seated decision, a multiple seats of decision. And so the fact of the lack of actual, here's our proof and this and that, is really a function of the numbers that we're throwing at it. As I said, you have to throw numbers at it now. The mass is the mass of the people, and it doesn't have to be that big, but it has to be a mass working on focused points. And I think our lawsuit, Jefferson Mining District versus Kids Hopper, exposes the system. It exposes one of the major weak links that we can use to pry them off their dang rock and get them out, throw them back out in the ocean where they belong, and take our country back that way from inside, not inside, but from our needs and from our property laws. I think it's possible. Thank you for tuning in today. Appreciate that you do. And send the podcast out. Try to get us on other networks to syndicate or synchrocast. Thank you to reallibertymedia.com and Grimner and Freedoms Network, another social network, a new social network you can join up with. And over there at julesucy.com or .tv, excuse me. I appreciate all your help there, and anybody that broadcasting terrestrially. Thank you very much for the airwave time. Hopefully this is something you all can do and take care of. with us working together in more proper ways.